The president wants to spy on 200 million Americans without a warrant. Has he read this document, which he was sworn to uphold?
Now, I will not have you libel Abraham Lincoln.
I don't understand the problem with registering guns. We register cars.
Mark Levine brings you the news the government doesn't want you to know.
Today, an explosive story about connections between white supremacists and Islamic terrorists.
When there's a conflict between Scalia's conservative values and the Constitution of the United States, he throws away the Constitution.
We do have secret prisons. That is not what America's all about.
Let's go to Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Good evening, America. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. In what's been called the Million Hoodie March, Americans all across the nation have been marching because of the death of Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin, a young 17-year-old African-American who in Florida was shot to death by a man by the name of George Zimmerman. The details of exactly what happened are still unknown and are still just coming out. But here's what we do know. We know Trayvon Martin was armed with nothing but Skittles and a can of iced tea. We know that the man following him, a man by the name of George Zimmerman, was someone who had joined his neighborhood watch and felt it was his personal responsibility to look out for suspicious people. We know Zimmerman called 911. We know he told 911 he was following the suspicious character. And we know that 911 told him not to, specifically told him not to. What happened after that? Well, it's hard to know who to believe. Trayvon Martin can't tell his story. He's dead. But George Zimmerman says he was approached from behind. He was attacked, that he cried out for help, that Trayvon was pounding him to the ground, and only then did he shoot him. There are some witnesses. Apparently, some have come forward, some have not. We still don't know all the facts of the case. What we do know is it's caused a nationwide sensation, with people all across America saying, why hasn't George Zimmerman been charged? Why aren't they investigating this? And does it have anything to do with Florida's Stand Your Ground law, a law that says, in effect, that you can have a gun and stand your ground and not walk away, even when you know that using that gun is likely to cause, well, preventable or unpreventable injury, likely to cause murder. To discuss it with me is Garland Nixon. Now, Garland Nixon is someone who's an ex-cop. He's an ex-ACLU member. Garland, I don't think there are many people who can say both they're an ex-cop and an ex-ACLU member.
I was the vice president of the Board of Governors for the state of Maryland affiliate.
Are you sure you weren't mad at yourself? Because
there was some real self-hate things going on there at the time. You know, I almost sued myself.
I was just going to say, did the ACLU Garland get mad at police officer Garland for? But Garland, of course, you know this, but our viewers may not. You and I share. We are the Raucous Caucus.
Yeah, we're 2/3 of the Raucous Caucus.
Terry D. Kester. We're on every Tuesday on WPFW 89.3 FM. You can catch us. We're going to be talking about the tragedy of Trayvon Martin. Tomorrow night, same time, 7 p.m., turn on 89.3 FM. You'll also hear our third counterpart, Terry D. Kester. And you'll have a chance to call in at that time. And I'm sure we're going to get lots of calls. You do have a chance to call in now. Anything I say, Garland says, you disagree with, you agree with. Just want to express whatever your views are on this very interesting, sad, dangerous topic. Give us a call. The toll-free number is 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. We always welcome your calls. So, Garland, as I'm saying, you're not just a radio host. You're an ex-cop, an ex-ACLU guy. You're also, dare I say, I think I can see this in the camera, you're also black. So
I think so.
I think so. According to, it's a construct, I know.
There we go. I'm accepting the concept of blackness, so I guess I'll be black.
So when it comes to the case of Trayvon Martin, you have, a guy that's unarmed. You have another guy who said he's acting in self-defense, who had a gun, who was following him from Neighborhood Watch. We have these new reports out now, at least from Zimmerman's side, that he was attacked. Why do you think this particular incident has achieved such national attention? I mean, unfortunately, people are shot and killed in America all the time. There's some 10,000 gun murders a year. Why has this caused such national attention?
There are so many things, and luckily we have a little time to talk about it.
All the time, all hour.
So we'll start with the first one. One of the issues I think that comes to the forefront here is the issue of people being able to carry guns, of any citizen, anyone being able to walk around with a concealed weapon.
Now, he had a permit, George.
Right. Now, if you'll notice, a permit, but basically in Florida, all you have to do is be breathing to get a permit.
That's true. That's true.
Okay. But that's an issue. If you notice, generally, law enforcement agencies oppose laws that allow people to carry more guns. They oppose these types of laws, such as the Stand Your Ground. The law enforcement opposes this. Now, why? The first issue is here. As a law enforcement officer, if there was any incident...
You were there for what, 10 years? You were a law enforcement officer?
27 years.
27 years.
Yes,
you're
retired.
Not still are you?
No, I'm retired.
Okay, that's good, because I may have sped on the way here.
Yeah, well,
well, you're Maryland.
Yeah,
all right, good, fair enough.
But, I mean, and just a little background, I was a commander of the Aviation Division, Investigations Division. I taught recruits. I was a commander of the training division.
Garland, you're more impressive than I realized. I've been attacking you on radio for years now. I had no idea. Maybe I'll have to treat you with a little deference.
I doubt if that's going to happen, Mark. Let's be realistic
But I am
here.
impressed.
Yeah, okay. But at any rate, so I know a little teeny bit about this stuff. But one of the issues, when a law enforcement officer comes on the scene, if let's say I get a call of whatever, an alarm going off.
A suspicious person being seen.
Yes.
I want you to deal with that one.
If I'm in a state where anyone can carry a gun, when I come up to the scene, I don't know who's the good guy and the bad guy. Yeah. I don't know who to shoot at, who not to shoot at. All I know is there are people running around with guns. If you're in a state where it's more difficult, where a person has to have a legitimate reason to carry a weapon.
The District of Columbia, for example.
When you come upon a scene and you see the guy running with a gun, if he doesn't...
You know he's the bad guy.
If he doesn't identify himself as a police officer or something, the odds are pretty good that he's the bad guy. That he's not the victim. So that's a major problem, and that's why law enforcement, which just goes to show the people that put these laws into place say they're doing it for the best in the best interest of the community, but the cops don't want it.
Before we get to
Trayvon
Martin, I want to specifically address Florida's Stand Your Ground law. Now, the way these laws work is, of course, generally under the law, just generally before we get to this specific law, the rule is that you can only use deadly force if you yourself are threatened with deadly force. If someone throws a punch, you can throw a punch back. If someone threatens to kill you or tries to kill you, yes, you can kill them.
Or as we say in law enforcement, if they hit you with a chicken feather, you can hit them with a turkey feather.
You can hit them with a turkey feather. So
you can raise force.
A little bit more. What's interesting is that generally, before this Florida law, if somebody, for example, steals your wallet, you can't shoot to kill them. You can't. But what's interesting is the old common law, the old English common law, as a lawyer I can tell you, said that if somebody came into your home, burglary, actually broke into your home while you're there, you could defend your castle. And even if they weren't trying to kill you, they just wanted to come in your home and steal your TV set, you could shoot and kill them. And it was perfectly legal because of ancient British law that dates back for hundreds of years. It's called the Castle Doctrine. Florida has expanded, and not the only state. I know there's some other states, maybe Texas, I'm not sure which. Florida has expanded the Castle Doctrine and said your being, your person is your castle. So not just someone, because listen, breaking into a home requires some sort of violence. I mean, you got to, wiggle a door, break a lock, break a window, get in somehow.
It's a very aggressive crime.
Move. That's right. Whereas two people on the street, we approach people on the street all the time, and there's no reason to expect any kind of aggression. So Florida's law, which says, hey, if somebody attacks you, you can kill them on the street. If someone asks for your wallet, I guess you can kill. Does it go that far?
That's the question.
If someone on Florida says, give me your wallet, can you pull out a gun and shoot? Is that how far this law goes?
That's a good question. And what takes it further is apparently there's some there is some information coming out that there is an allegation that there was a fisticuffs, that there was some type of...
Yeah, there are witnesses that claim Trayvon was beating him up.
Now, so the question becomes, if me and you get in a fist fight on the street, I can pull out a gun now and shoot you?
Yeah, that's according
to what we're looking
drunk
at
people
now.
in bars getting fights all the time.
Yes. If the fact holds here, let's just say there was some kind of physical altercation. Is Florida now basically setting a precedent that says if you get in a physical altercation with another person and you are losing that altercation, that you can pull out a weapon and you can kill the person?
Yeah. See, I'd have no problem, by the way, if George Zimmerman pulled out a can of mace.
Oh no, whatever.
I mean,
if he was legitimately attacked, we don't know but let's just, for the sake of this part of the argument, let's say if he was attacked by a person. We don't have evidence.
Pull out a can of mace, and disable the attacker and protect his life.
But in taking into consideration the outweigh the attacker by 100 pounds.
That's the other thing. I mean, I've seen pictures of Trayvon Martin. He doesn't look to me like
a 17-year-old skinny kid.
He was an A student. He never had a criminal record.
Nope.
It seems to me kind of strange, if Zimmerman's story is true, and I have my doubts about whether it's true, that this A student, wearing nothing but a hoodie and carrying nothing but Skittles and iced tea, even if Zimmerman pissed him off And I'm sure he did.
Chasing a person down can do that.
I'm sure he did. That he would sort of turn around and beat him up. There's nothing that we know in Trayvon Martin's past to suggest that he had a volatile temper, that he got in fights. I haven't heard anything about that. I don't know if you have.
No. Certainly the other part is this. You know, I'm 190 pounds. I find it hard to believe that I would be in fear for my life of a person that weighed 90 pounds.
Well, he didn't weigh 90 pounds.
Well, I'm saying there's 100 pounds difference between these two people. I'm just giving you the same example. You know what I mean? When I say from my perspective, someone 90 pounds, I could probably most likely push the person. So do we know?
I don't know the difference of what, like 140 and 240? Was that
something like that? Something like that. There was about 100 pounds difference.
So these stand your ground laws, which cops oppose, people support them because we have the right to own guns, I guess, and frankly even. Some people who, like women say, or at least the NRA tells women that this equalizes it. Or you're a police officer. You know a lot more about guns and mace than I do. Would not mace have the same self-defensive, not the same attacking force, but the same defensive force? If someone comes after you, if someone's attacking you, I mean, Mason, that may end up disabling you both. I mean, let's face it. It may get you both.
You bring up a very, very good issue here. Let's say, as a law enforcement officer, I'm involved in a similar incident. I'm a cop. I'm involved in an incident where whatever happens.
Can you shoot? I mean, I guess you can. It's a law enforcement.
I can use non-lethal force.
So you don't even have a right.
I'm a cop, and this kid.
So you tell me if George Zimmerman were a cop, he couldn't shoot?
He'd have to spray the kid or something. You can't just pull out, as a police officer, you can't just pull out your gun. Remember,
even if someone's hitting you.
There's what's called a force continuum. I train this stuff, a force continuum. And as I said, if someone hits you with a chicken feather, you can hit them with a turkey feather.
You can go up one level.
You can just go up one level. And keep in mind, I'm not alleging that Trayvon Martin fought him. I'm just, for the purpose of this argument.
We don't know the specifics.
I'm just saying, let's say worst case scenario, Martin did. If I'm a cop and some kid takes a swipe at me, or I'm trying to arrest someone and they physically resist, you can't pull out your gun and shoot them. You can spray them. You can use You can
even tase them a lot of times.
You can use tasers. We had an acid baton. You could whop them in the leg a couple times with the acid baton. You could take some defensive action. You could raise the level.
That's really what it's called.
A police officer, what, an asp?
It's called an asp.
ASP, ASP.
Yeah, because
excuse me,
I
misunderstood what you were saying. Whip it like that, and ASP, ASP, like the snake.
I misunderstood you.
But so you bring up a good point. We're saying that any citizen can just can immediately
go further than a cop can. Hang on, that thought, John. If you want to call in and join this discussion, whatever your point of view, we want to hear from you. The toll-free number is 888-488-MARK, 888-6275. We'd love to hear from you. We'll be right back after this.
Some dreams are universal. Dreams that inspire us. Multiple sclerosis is a devastating disease that changes lives forever. The National MS Society does more for people with MS than any organization in the world. But we can't do it alone. To get involved, visit us online at nationalmssociety.org. or call 1-800-FIGHT-MS. This is why we're here. Because nobody dreams of having multiple sclerosis.
What's wrong with this picture? Half of young Americans can't locate economic powers like Japan and India. 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. Without geography, our children aren't ready for the world. Geography is everywhere. It's incredible creatures, rhythm, fashion, flavor. It's economics and politics. It's change. Understanding connections between people and places is critical in the 21st century. That's why we created mywonderfulworld.org. Go there now for your free parent and teacher action kits and give our kids the power of global knowledge. Because kids who understand our world today can succeed in it tomorrow.
I need a job.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. We are examining the tragedy of Trayvon Martin. We may never know what truly happened between Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman. We're getting conflicting accounts now as we speak. But what we do know is the specifics of Florida law that may indeed have been one of the causes for this tragedy. My guest is my fellow talk radio host, Garland Nixon. We are co-hosts of the Raucous Caucus, along with Charity Kester. You can find us on 89.3 FM tomorrow, talking about this very case.
Oh, yes.
Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Garland, of course, for the viewers who don't know, you are an ex-cop and an ex-ACLU guy, which I think means you hate yourself. I'm still not convinced about that. Let's go, though. I want to go
right... No, it's you I don't like. I love myself.
Okay. Let's go to the Florida law here, because this is the one that we're talking about. It's called justifiable use of force, and I'm going to read it out loud and show it to you on screen. A person is justified in using force except deadly force against another when they reasonably believe such conduct is necessary to defend themselves and so forth. However, a person is justified in the use of deadly force, does not have a duty to retreat if he or she reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself. I got to tell you, imminent death or great bodily harm, the statute actually isn't as bad as I feared, although I guess the question would be, what's great bodily harm? One punch, that's not great bodily harm. Pounding your head against the pavement might be. Again, we don't really know all the circumstances.
That's the problem with that.
I wonder whether he felt more at ease, let's say, in shooting to kill, knowing this Florida law exists. Do you think this gives license to people to, whether in the law or not? Do you think it gives psychological license?
It certainly does. And one thing about remember about law enforcement, and that is that. Anytime there's a law, there are going to be people looking for ways around it. As an attorney, there are going to be people looking for ways to utilize it to their advantage.
Right.
So let's just say we're in Florida, and I want to kill you for some reason. We're partners.
Pick a fight. Call me names.
We're partners.
Partners in crime.
We're partners in a business pursuit, and if you die, I get all the money.
There you go.
Well, what happens?
I would never.
We go out. We have
a
couple drinks. We get in a fight. I make sure that I'm beat up a little bit. I pull out a gun and shoot you and kill you.
And you make sure that there are no witnesses. That would be the better way.
I make sure there's some witnesses that I give a few bucks. Or even if I don't, if we're in a bar and I got witnesses around, they say, well, I saw those two guys fighting and Mark was getting the best of them, and so he pulled out a gun and shot him. So you give license for people to utilize this law really to kill whoever they want to kill. It's pretty easy to get away with murder now in any state where all you have to do is say, I was in fear. I mean, how subjective is that? I was in fear of bodily harm.
Well,
the guy was half my size.
You have to reasonably believe that such force is necessary to prevent great bodily harm. Well, I have a feeling at the end of the day this is going to go to a jury, and that'll be the question. But, of course, in the specific case we have, in the case of George Zimmerman, he wasn't even arrested.
No.
There were no charges filed against him. Now, apparently, after, hundreds of thousands of people protested, 1 million people signed petitions, now they're investigating. But I think one of the reasons why people are so upset is not because of the tragedy of one grown man killing a 17-year-old. That's tragic, that's awful, but unfortunately that happens more than we'd like to admit in America. But the fact that Zimmerman was Latino, or looked white, or Latino.
Apparently he had some Latino background.
Yeah, he's
but we can talk about that, whether that's even an issue.
And Trayvon Martin's black. Mm-hmm. And the fact that after the killing, he wasn't arrested. That hit a nerve in the black community, and not just the black community.
Throw one thing else in. And in fact, after the killing, they tested the body of the shooting victim for drugs and alcohol. They didn't test the shooter for drugs and alcohol.
Now that's interesting.
It's not interesting. Let me tell you something happened to me you know me, I've always got stories. I'll tell you something happened to me one time in Annapolis with Annapolis City Police. I was driving. And a guy backed into the side of me out of a parking spot. Backed into the side of me. Wham! Right into the side of me. He didn't pull out and I hit him. He got it. I'm sorry, it was all my fault. The Annapolis City Police got there. They took both of our license. I didn't identify myself as a police officer at that point. I just kind of watched.
You wanted to see
took both of our license. He ran it. He said, gave the guy his license back. He took mine. He said, I want to run 1028 and 1029. which he's running me for driver's license and he's checking for warrants. He did that with my license. He didn't do it with the other guy's license.
Now, he didn't say that out loud. You just heard him say
I was
that.
standing right next to him.
He thought you didn't know what a 1028
was. Yeah.
Did you say to him, are you going to run the same things on the other guy?
No, I didn't. There was a lot more to it. I don't want to get into it. I ended up talking with his supervisor. That he made a lot of
I'm glad you did.
Grave errors. But had I been the person I am today, I would have taken it a lot further. But the fact of the matter is, what did that demonstrate? You have two people, and one of them is viewed as a criminal. There is an implicit association in that brain. There's a black guy with a hoodie, for God's sake, and he's a teenager.
Garland, I know you. You moved your car sideways into his
his rear. I can't fool you, can I?
You turned your wheel sideways, and you actually moved the car sideways. One of those little Jetson cars. That's how you did it.
And
right?
I had a criminal look to me while I was doing it.
It's the goatee.
Well,
it's got to be the goatee. That's a criminal goatee.
Well, I was a cop then. I couldn't have a goatee. I was clean shaven.
Oh, okay.
Something interesting.
I can't blame the goatee.
Something interesting I think we ought to move to. And that is, and because this is a big issue, the issue of the hoodie. And let me make a statement and ask what you think about it.
While you're doing that, I'm going to find the Geraldo Rivera.
Geraldo Rivera basically blamed it on the hoodie. Well, it's hoodies and people see, and I'll put it like this, he inferred that the hoodie was a significant part of the problem and almost inferred in some way that it was legitimate to look at a person with a hoodie and suspect that person of being a crime. Now, my immediate reaction is that the hoodie was responsible for that shooting in the same way that gravity is responsible for plane crashes.
I understand.
You know?
You know what? I want to do something right now, because when I heard about that, I was outraged. I want to play for the people who have not seen it. Mm-hmm. I want to play Geraldo Rivera and what he said on that very point. Let's go and let's watch it right now. Oh, they got to watch this ad.
We don't want to watch this ad.
All right. So we'll wait.
While the ad's playing.
We'll wait for 10 seconds.
So what are your thoughts on the hoodie, Mark?
I wear a hoodie. I go out. I wear a hoodie. Is it somehow now Americans
better not wear one in Florida.
Cannot wear a hoodie? Can we play this? Can we get the sound?
Much responsible for Trayvon Martin's death as George Zimmerman was.
I'm not hearing the sound. We may have to do this in the break, which is fine.
Yeah.
When I heard what Geraldo Rivera said, I was really sickened. I was sickened for so many reasons. One, the way he said he told his own son, you can't wear a hoodie. It made me think of all the people in America who be free to do whatever they want, who are restricted from doing so, not because of them doing anything wrong, but because there are horrible people out there. Women who are afraid to wear sexy outfits because people will say
she invited the rape.
They're going to be raped.
Yeah.
Gay people who are afraid to have a kiss in Mississippi because they're afraid they're going to be beat up. It reminds me of myself when I lived in Europe for a year, and I was going to synagogue, and I had my bag, carried my prayer shawl, but I know how much anti-Semitism there is in Europe, and I hid it, and then I felt bad for having hidden it, and then I showed it, and then I actually hated myself for having the fear to feel like I had to hide this
legitimate fear.
A legitimate fear.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Just as legitimate for the gay couple in Mississippi.
Yep.
Just as legitimate for the woman who wants to wear a sexy dress. You know what? A black man should be able to wear a hoodie. Right? A woman should be able to wear lipstick and a sexy dress. A gay couple should be able to kiss. A Jewish person should be able to bring in a prayer shawl. Particularly in the United States, it's a free country, and yet we have parents who warn their kids, understandably, and say, hey, there are bad, hateful, racist people out there. But what got me about Geraldo was not that he warned his son. As much as I hate just that whole concept, what got me is he seemed to blame the victim. He seemed just like the people who blame a woman for being raped because she wore a sexy outfit. And that's why, I don't know, I'm so angry at Geraldo. I want to see him fired. I mean, I think it's that severe. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, it is pretty egregious, because basically, as you said, he's blaming the victim. He's saying when he sees someone do something, basically what we're talking about, and this is something that has been discussed much.
It was raining out. You need a hoodie.
You know what the big discussion that we're not talking about here is an issue of racial profiling. That's the big discussion.
Of course.
As you know, when I was with the ACLU, we had this huge lawsuit, a landmark lawsuit against the Maryland State Police that was that ended in a consent decree. Basically, the state police saying, we've never done anything wrong, we haven't made done anything wrong, but we're going to pay out hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know how it is. And we promise not to do it again.
That's how the lawsuits work.
But Ultimately, we're talking about a person, and this is the issue that we don't discuss, how do people feel here when they bring up the issue race? That someone saw an African American and they assumed because he was an African American that he was a criminal. Now, the issue of the hoodie, keep in mind, the Maryland State Police, when that case started, the gentleman that was pulled over and searched was a lawyer with a suit and tie on, coming from a conference.
Right.
So the issue of what a person is wearing when it comes to racial profiling, the statistics bear out over and over again that it's not about what the person is wearing.
Well, it also may be a combination. It may be that driving while black is a danger. Driving while black with a hoodie is even more of a danger. I got to tell you something, and maybe I'm an ignoramus with regard to pop culture. I'm willing to concede that point. I'm not very good at pop culture. I don't listen to a lot of rap. But a hoodie to me means nothing. Maybe because I wear one when it's raining a little bit out. I'll put on the little hoodie. I don't think anything about it. I don't think anything about a person with a hoodie. I got to tell you, if I'm profiling, tattoos probably scare me more than a hoodie does.
You know who wears hoodies all the time? Skateboarders and snowboarders.
Yeah.
The skateboarders and snowboarders, watch any of the movies or anything
That's
with
true.
them. They wear the real baggy pants.
People wear hoodies.
And they wear the hoodies and they wear the baggy stuff, and that's kind of like the hip hop gear looking thing, but even more baggier. That's skateboarding.
I don't know why anyone should be scared of someone in baggy pants. If they ran after me, they'd trip and fall.
Right.
So
yeah.
I think it's not actually very, very...
So this kid who had on a hoodie could have just as easily been carrying a skateboard about to go to the local skateboard
Or as
park.
President Obama said, if I had a son,
right,
that would look like me, and Trayvon would look like me. I got to tell you, I was very proud of the president at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on both sides of Obama. Generally, I support the man. You've heard me when I've been very mad at him about policy. I don't know, that gave me chills.
Well,
and I don't know why it gave me chills.
I'll tell you what was interesting about that, what I found interesting about that. What President Obama did was he voiced what African Americans feel.
Sure. That's
the feeling an African American gets because, I have a nephew that's in his 20s and he's a tall, good-looking, strong, strapping kid. And he has a master's degree in journalism. He works for The Economist. But when he comes, brilliant kid. When he comes home,
of course, why shouldn't he be comfortable?
He's going to wear sweats or whatever, and he's going to look like Trayvon Martin, probably a little larger, but he's going to look like a Trayvon Martin walking down the street. That's the look you'll probably see with him. So what President Obama voiced was what African Americans felt was, my son, my brother, my cousin, my whatever looks like that. Oh my God, if he was walking across, we all have a young person, I'm sure you have nephews, cousins, brothers.
I got a nephew who wears a hoodie. Yeah. He happens to be a white kid, but he's got kind of a scraggly
So that was
beard.
the fear that he expressed, which was interesting way to do it.
I'll tell you something. I think we all have Trayvon Martins in our families, and it is very scary. And we need to know the facts of the case. And I'm not saying that they're not important. 888-488-MARK. We'll be right back after this.
I need a job.
Necesito trabajo.
I would like to speak English better.
Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
I want to be a U.S. citizen.
Quisiera ser ciudadano de los Estados Unidos.
For over 35 years,
Por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
el Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
Capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals.
ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos
Are a small part of what we do.
son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
Para ayuda, información o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia,
comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Hey, Lena, where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or a family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. Because when it comes to chronic kidney disease, you might...
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. We have fixed our technical problems. I'm about to play the clip from Geraldo Rivera. If you want to call in, I really encourage you to do so. You don't have to agree with anything that my guest Garland Nixon or I, Mark Levine, say. Or you can agree with us, whatever you want to say. This is a rare event in TV when you get a chance to call in and give your opinion. We hope you will do so. 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. I want to get right to that clip from Geraldo Rivera.
I think the hoodie is as much responsible for Trayvon Martin's death as George Zimmerman was.
What do you mean?
When you see a kid walking, Julia, when you see a kid walking down the street, particularly a dark-skinned kid like my son Cruz, who I constantly yelled at when he was going out wearing a damn hoodie or those pants around his ankles, take that hood off. People look at you and what's the instant identification? What's the instant association? It's those crime scene surveillance tapes. Every time you see someone sticking up a 7-Eleven, the kid's wearing a hoodie. Every time you see a mugging on a surveillance camera or they get the old lady in the alcove, it's a kid wearing a hoodie. You have to recognize that this whole stylizing yourself as a gangster, you're going to be a gangster wannabe, well, people are going to perceive you as a menace. That's what happens. It is an instant reflexive action. Remember Juan Williams, our colleague, our brilliant colleague, he got in trouble with NPR because he said Muslims in formal garb at the airport conjure a certain reaction in him, a response in him. That's an automatic reflex. Juan wasn't defending it. He was explaining that that's what happened when he sees these particular people in that particular place. When you see a black or Latino youngster, particularly on the street, you walk to the other side of the street. You try to avoid that confrontation. Trayvon Martin's, God bless him, he's an innocent kid, a wonderful kid, a box of Skittles in his hand. He didn't deserve to die, but I'll bet you money, if he didn't have that hoodie on, that nutty neighborhood watch guy wouldn't have responded in that violent and aggressive way.
I see this, and I see that clip, and I see red, Garland. I got to tell you, I've seen it before, and I'm like shaking. To say that a kid wearing a hoodie is as responsible for his death as George Zimmerman, he specifically says because he's dark-skinned, because he's dark. White people can't wear hoodies. Dark-skinned people. He says the gangsta look. I'm sorry. A hoodie is a hoodie. If he were wearing gang tattoos and flashing gang signs, that'd be one thing. That wasn't the case. Then he goes on and suggests that Muslims shouldn't be able to wear their religious garb, which has been around for, 1,000+ years or so. I think it's beyond the pale. I want to see him gone. I think he needs to be removed from the air.
Well, I've got mixed emotions about that. I'll tell you why. Because to some extent, I think those types of attitudes should be displayed in public so they can be discussed. See, one of the problems I think that we have in our society is that we have a lot of 800-pound elephants that we don't address. I think that attitude is there. There are people who won't say that, but they think that. And now
he could have expressed it differently. He could have said, "I'm afraid when my son goes out in a hoodie because some bad man is going to hurt him, and I tell him don't do it, just like I would tell my daughter not to walk alone at night because I'm afraid of some rapist."
Right.
In doing so, you are not equating the victim with the aggressor. You're saying there are bad people out there. Be careful of bad people. That's not how he said it.
No, not whatsoever. And so that's something we need to discuss and understand and needs to be out in the public.
Should we call for his apology?
Well, what difference does it make? He's not going to apologize because he doesn't think there's anything.
I think
he may if he gets enough.
I think enough people will complain that he's going to have to say something. He's going to have to address it.
Yeah. But the issue is there for discussion and it throws out because I'm now, as you said, I'm now blaming the woman who was raped. Well, if she didn't have on that, hey, you know something? That miniskirt she had on is as much to blame for her rape as the rapist. Right?
It's the same thing.
There's no difference. That what a person has on, he does not discuss the issue of justice. and that if we are in a society, we need to think and act in a just manner. And if we think and act unjustly, then we are out of tune with society. We are acting in an antisocial manner. So what he was, the very word that he was saying, the very picture that he was drawing was antisocial, because it goes against a just society.
Let me ask you, when he says, when you see a black or Latino youngster, people cross the other side of the street. I know myself, if it's daytime, whatever. If it's nighttime and I'm alone and I see a group of people, or even a solo individual, white, black, or otherwise, I'm more likely just to keep my eye out, to be careful. You never know what someone might do at dark. And I'll fully admit, if a guy is wearing a three-piece suit or even a two-piece suit with a tie, I'm less likely to be concerned than if they're wearing clothes that suggest, someone who more likely fits the profile of a criminal. I'm quite confident that race doesn't do it, because I know that with white kids, I've done the same thing with black kids. And I probably wouldn't cross the street with an elderly person. But to me, there's a difference between being careful, because at night when you're alone, people can commit crimes, and a black or Latino youngster. Is Geraldo really saying that a white kid wearing the exact same clothes, he wouldn't cross the street?
Well, not only that,
I think he's
let's think about what we're talking about. We're not talking about somebody that crossed the street. We're talking about
someone who shoots someone and kills.
For starters, chased someone after he was told by the authorities not to pursue the person, who chased someone with a gun. So I can say this for sure, Mark. No matter what, if I'm walking down the street and I see someone walking up the same side, I'm probably not going to chase them with a gun.
That's true.
I think that's, so what he says is so far, as you said, it's so far over the edge, because he minimizes
I was taught
what happened.
If I'm in a city street and it's night, and I've done this, I avoid the dark alleys.
Yes.
All right? If I'm, you probably tell people
taught
that.
People
I'm
this.
walking down the sidewalk and I see a dark alley, I will walk out, usually if it's nighttime and not many cars on the street, I'll walk out in the middle of the street where it's lit, because I know I'm less likely to have danger where it's lit than where it's not lit. That's all fine and good. It's actually something that we should encourage people to do.
Personal safety. I've taught people this stuff.
Exactly. But when you say a black or Latino youngster, when you say Muslims wearing their garb, when you say a dark-skinned kid wearing a hoodie, it sounds to me clear that Geraldo is justifying racial profiling.
Clearly.
And I find it striking that a man, maybe I shouldn't, but a man by the name of Geraldo Rivera, a man with an obvious Latino name, he even refers to his own son as dark-skinned, you would think, and maybe I should have a Latino here to give, but I talked to a Latino friend of mine, frankly, just last night about it. He's like, no, we're not defending this guy. George Zimmerman may be Latino, but he was wrong. He was clearly wrong. This ingrained racism is something that people do talk about, but they usually talk about in whispers. So I'll grant you that Geraldo saying it publicly is good in the sense that it brings up national conversation. But I also think people need to condemn, at the very least, condemn very loudly.
There's no question. And what we need to also discuss is the fact that he's minimizing it, the fact that he's changing the discussion. This is a false equivalent. That he's now saying, well, you cross the street or whatever. Well, you know what? If you cross the street or you lock the doors when I walk by because you see a black person, that's your business. I don't care. It may aggravate me a little bit. No harm, no foul.
I lock the doors about in the car and I see anybody walk by.
But if you pull out a piece and start chasing me down the street, I don't know about you, Mark. I have a problem with that.
Yeah, I certainly do.
But don't compare the two. Don't compare someone cutting my hair with someone stabbing me with a samurai sword.
Yes, that's an important distinction. I'm curious to know, this thing has hit so far home to so many people, particularly to the black community. There was the Million Hoodie March. To what extent do you think the authorities are acting now because of the hubbub? You're an ex-cop. How often is it? You're supposed to look at every case on its own, and I'm sure you did, Garland, but people you work with, I'm trying to get you off the hook, how often is it that when a case becomes very publicized, the cops are likely to follow the book?
Well, make no mistake about it. Cops are people. And police departments do have a political element. The chief is named by police officers. When I was a major, everyone above the rank of major served at the pleasure of the governor. So he could wipe the slate clean and say, we need a new set of majors and lieutenant colonels. You all are gone. So police departments are very, susceptible to the influence of the public, to the influence of politics.
I'm fine with that. They should be.
You're right.
Because if they weren't susceptible to the public, we'd have even less way to keep them in check.
So the fact is,
I'm okay with that.
Absolutely. But there's some things that are brought into question here, certainly, and that is, the thing that I still am befuddled by, and when I look at the entire instance, regardless of what happened, the fact that a person can be instructed by the authorities not to pursue a person. Despite that, they pursue the person anyway and then get in an altercation and kill the person. How can I chase you down, and once I catch you, then I say I'm defending my life? In fact, it's more like the other way around. Here's a kid. Think about it. If you've got a 17-year-old kid, for God's sake, there are, child molesters. And so you tell your kid, look, you see advertisements, public service. If you see an adult tell someone, if you see somebody run, his girlfriend's telling him, you better run. So here this guy's running, and this guy's chasing him, the guy's after him, and he's thinking, I got to do something. This guy. And now, once it became clear to this young man, this man's chasing me, certainly he probably thought to himself, I got to do something to, defend myself.
We don't know all the circumstances yet, but for all we know, George Zimmerman showed his gun, which could have provoked Trayvon Martin to hit him. I mean, that's the sadness of all this escalation here, is that both men ostensibly, possibly were trying to defend themselves, but in trying to defend themselves, it's possible they escalated it to what ended up being.
And when that comes down to it, the person who was chasing the other person, I just find it difficult that you can chase someone to defend yourself. When you are instructed not to by the authorities, that is a significant part of it.
Did it surprise you that a 9/11 operator had the, training or presence of mind to say, don't chase this guy? I got to say, I was impressed with the 9/11 operator.
It doesn't surprise
because some of them
me.
haven't been so good. You hear this 9/11 tapes because they're all recorded. Some of them haven't been so professional. I was very impressed. They must be trained to say that.
Yes, they are, and I wasn't surprised, because keep in mind the law enforcement officers or any public safety organization, any public safety agency is always cognizant of any liability. If you say something, take a swipe at the guy, chase the guy. If you instruct someone to take an action, and as a result they or someone else would be injured, the liability would fall on the 911 operator, and as the deep pockets theory goes, they're going to sue the county. So at the instant that a public safety official of any type sees a citizen taking an action that could put them in danger, they're going to immediately instruct them, do not do that. And what she said was, we don't need you
we don't need your
to
help.
do that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's our job. We handle that.
The other thing that gets me is that what Zimmerman apparently claimed was that he saw someone acting suspiciously and could be on drugs. He didn't see violence. He didn't see theft. He didn't see a guy breaking a window or stealing a wallet or beating somebody else. He called the police because someone was acting suspiciously. I'm sorry, there are 350 million Americans, and most of us act suspiciously at some point or another.
Suspiciously right now, in my opinion.
If you want to call in, I'd like to hear from you. It's 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. I was about to give out a different 800 number. Call in. Let's hear from you. We'll be right back.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Wanted some matches and that's no good. Yeah. Listen to Smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about Rita's life. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Yeah.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home? When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is? What? More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent. Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. It's the last segment here. We're talking about the tragedy of Trayvon Martin. There's still time to call in if you want to join in the conversation. It's 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. The local call is 571-749-1166. My guest is Garland Nixon. He is with me, two-thirds of the Raucous Caucus. We're on 89.3 FM every Tuesday night at 7. He's also an ex-police officer, an ex-ACLU member. And Garland, before we get to more questions about Trayvon Martin and the black community, I want to play for you the news clip talking about the 911 tapes.
Shooting death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right, what is your phone number?
There's gunshots.
Minutes earlier, George Zimmerman, a self-appointed watchman in his gated community, told police he was suspicious of a young man he had seen around 7 p.m. on February 26th.
He's got his hand in his waistband. And he's a black male.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that.
But Zimmerman ignored the instruction.
They always get away.
A series of 911 callers reported hearing screams for help, then gunfire.
I'm pretty sure the guy's dead out here. Holy
Zimmerman, who is licensed to carry a gun, told police he acted in self-defense. Zimmerman was not arrested, triggering outrage in the community. Martin family supporters say they don't understand why police decided Trayvon was a threat, even though he was being followed by an armed man. Trayvon's father, Tracy Martin.
A cell phone, his headphones, a pack of Skittles, and an Arizona iced tea was the only thing he had on him. I can't figure out how he's claiming self-defense.
Zimmerman has not been arrested in a state where use of deadly force is permitted if a citizen reasonably feels threatened. Prosecutors will decide whether Zimmerman remains free and if the case should go to a grand jury. Randall Pinkston, CBS News, New York.
So there you have it. You had the actual 911 call tapes. We still don't know what witnesses are going to say. Frankly, as a lawyer, as a cop, you and I both know witnesses sometimes don't get all their stories straight. But the clearest evidence is what happened at the time of the event. And here we have the 911 calls. He says he has his hand in his waistband and he's a black male. He has his hand in his waistband? I mean, for all I know, that's where he keeps his Skittles or his Arizona iced tea. And he says he's a black male. And he says these a-holes always get away.
And I guess this time he was going to make sure that this one didn't get away.
And you heard the 911 officer say with pretty clear conviction and pretty quickly, okay, we don't need you to do that.
Yep.
He's like, I'm going to follow. We don't need you to do that. We don't need you to do that. You know, he's made the report. I assume the 911 operator is going to call the police. The authorities are going to check it out. We don't need you to do that. Frankly, if there was danger for George Zimmerman, he could be in greater danger by following some criminal, right? Yeah. Better to let the police handle it than to try to be a vigilante in justice. So now we hear Zimmerman's story. Trayvon attacked him. Trayvon pounded his head against the pavement. Yet when I hear that 911 tape, again, I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. Trayvon's dead. We're not going to hear his story. And George Zimmerman says, he was attacking me. But then I hear what he has to say. He had his hand in his waistband? That's a crime in America now?
Well, apparently existing while black was an issue for him.
Clearly.
But clearly, now, all jokes aside, here's the thing about it. He said did he say and he's a black male or he's a black male, whatever the case?
I think he said and he's a black male.
Right, so he's a black male. What he's telling you at that point is that is of significance to him, that he is taking a number of things into account.
Right. I'm finding it.
Yeah.
You keep talking.
Yeah, he's taking a number of things into account. What am I taking into account? He's acting suspicious. Well, he never articulated what acting suspicious was, and apparently
his hand in his waistband.
Right.
That's the thing that's suspicious.
Right. He has his hand in his.
Yeah.
It was before that, and he says, and he's a black male. Clearly.
Right.
Clearly, one of the things that he was taking into account to determine that this man was a threat
was race.
Was that he was a black male.
Right.
Which begs the question: if he weren't a black male, would you have seen that? So if you take that out of the
I don't
mix.
want to offend George Zimmerman here for anything. It's possible. I want to hear the whole clips. That it was merely descriptive, right? I mean, if you say someone just attacked me, and it was a black male, or it was a white woman, or it was an Asian 60-year-old, which would be rare for them to attack me, but I mean, it could just be descriptive. So I don't want to presume that's what it meant, but I want to hear the full tapes. I want to hear it in the full context. I want there to be a full investigation, and everyone should want a full investigation. And I think one of the things that angered the community so much, the African American community, all of us Americans, was that at least initially there wasn't an investigation.
Well, I think in the context of what he was saying that it wasn't a descriptive term, because descriptive, it would have been all descriptive. He's got on
5'10",
jeans.
yeah, there you go.
He's 5'10",
right?
He's got on this color
He's thin. He looks to be about 17. He looks to be about 17.
But in the context of what he said was,
that's true.
He's suspicious.
That's true. He didn't say he looks like a 17-year-old kid. I think he's black. He's a guy. He's wearing a hoodie.
Right. So the context of what he said begins by he's suspicious.
That's a good point.
Then he goes on to what's suspicious about him. He's got his hands in his. He's a black male.
I want to replay just that part.
Yeah, play that.
I got it right here.
Waistband. And he's a black male.
There you go. He's got his hand in his waistband. And he's a black male.
He's not describing his clothes. He's saying,
you're right.
These are the things going on around this guy right now. One of the things that's going on around him is he's a black male. Keep in mind, what we're talking about is implicit associations, an association in this man's mind. One of the things that people get caught up with is calling someone a racist or a non-racist. When calling a person a racist in general is a broad, it's a broad description that rarely applies. But that doesn't mean...
I don't know that it rarely applies.
It doesn't. Well, no, and I'll tell you why. Because the way our brain associates things is the issue. When we dealt
Most
with...
racists don't consider themselves racist, but I'm not saying it rarely applies. There are a lot of people that are still racist.
Because it's such a broad term that most people aren't...
You can be a little bit racist or a lot racist.
Right, that's why people say, well, I don't have... I have black friends, I'm not racist. But what I'm saying here is this. Your actions can have an effect on people. It can have an effect on one particular group that the actions come out racist. If you have in your mind an implicit association, when I see a black person, I think of a criminal. That's way deep down. It may be because of what you saw on TV and movies and everything else, but that association, and you are the least racist person in the world, but your brain associates these two things. So when you see that black person, you associate that person with crime, and you act on that implicit association within your brain, and afterwards you say, I'm the least racist person that you would ever meet in your mind. But the problem is you actually shot that black person because your brain associated them.
Garland, you were telling me in the break that you haven't really seen the black community this upset in a long time. Frankly, I can't think of a reaction this strong since the Rodney King beating. Right. The last time I could think of where nationwide the black community was so much up in arms about a specific event that happened to two individuals. Why has this killing so electrified the black community?
There's a couple things going on here. Keep in mind that the Rodney King was the African American community saw a bunch of white cops perpetrate violence against an African American, and there's been issues where they've seen generally a white police officer, or in some instances black police officers, but police officers shoot a black person who had no gun. Or
there was a guy, I forgot. He had something in his car. Right.
Et cetera. There's the Sean Bell recently.
Who was the woman? She had like a hairbrush or something? And
yes, I believe that was in Florida. So the African Americans saw this, but here's what happened. The black people would see racial profiling as a threat, but it's a threat from the cops. Why? Because the cops can shoot you and they can take your liberty. Not from everyone. You can racial profile me till you're blue in the face, but you can't take my liberty or my freedom, etc.
Can march,
now,
but they can't kill you.
What happens? When you change the laws so that everyone can carry a gun, and you in fact give citizens more authority to use deadly force than police officers, now racial profiling is a deadly threat. 300 million Americans are running around here, and now they can racial profile you, and you can be shot. So as a group, because when you talk about individual crime versus group crime, black people weren't enslaved because they were individuals. Jews weren't wiped out because they were individuals.
That's right.
These were acts on particular groups. And when anyone who's a member of a group feels a threat because they are a member of that group, it's much more frightening than it is individual fear.
It's the difference between hate think and hate crime.
Right.
And it's one of the things that I think that's really important here. What Florida laws do, what these stand your ground laws do, is they actually give citizens more rights to kill than cops. And because cops at least have some training, at least have some background, at least have someone looking over their shoulder, making sure they do the right thing. Not that cops don't mess up, not that cops don't do awful things, they do. But at least they have training and responsibility that you would hope would tamper down some of the worst offenses. Whereas, regular folks, we may have met some bad cops in our day, but we've probably met some more harmful things said by just regular folks who haven't learned to keep a lot of that stuff in. It seems to me, we were talking about group crimes, hate crimes. The scary thing about hate crimes, and I don't know that people who aren't a minority can understand this. I hope they can. I would think they can. And frankly, most people are a minority in some way, shape, or form. But the thing about hate crimes is you never know when they're coming out for you.
Right.
That's what makes it personal. That's why when President Obama said, if I had a son, it could be Trayvon Martin. If person A and person B get in a fight, even if person A is a complete bastard and person B is completely innocent and person A kills person B, you feel bad for person B. You think it was wrong. You want to see justice, but it doesn't hit you in the heart. It doesn't make you worry when your son goes out to play. It doesn't make you worry when your sister is going on the street. When person A kills person B because person B is, fill in the word, black, gay, Jewish, Muslim, then suddenly all people of that minority get scared. And that's why I firmly support hate crimes laws. Because a hate crime, murder is a terrible thing. But a hate crime is not an attack just on the person that's killed. It's an attack on an entire community.
It's like a form of terrorism. It's funny, in my intro to criminal justice course, I used to talk about hate crime. That'd be a whole couple days on that. And I would ask the kids a series of questions about that. And then I would get various answers. And then I'd say, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'd come up with a scenario with all the red-haired kids or blonde-haired kids and say, right here on the campus of Anne Arundel Community College, we have a killer.
Only kills redheads.
Sticking out, only red. And I draw this picture where there'd been a number killed, they were mangled, they were beaten, and then I'd start asking them how they felt. And you know what? The kids in that, just painting that picture.
That's right. They got hate crimes.
And the rest of the kids were pretty relaxed.
Right.
Like,
that's how people understand hate crimes. Garland, an hour goes very fast. Whatever I had you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on. Folks, Garland and I and Terry will be on the air tomorrow, 89.3 FM, 7 p.m., to talk about this case and to take your calls. We are the Raucous Caucus, and we hope to hear from you then. Garland, again, thank you for coming on.
All right, thanks for inviting me, Laura. Been a pleasure.